Good evening. So here we are. We're going to do Chapter 7, Part 2, and I promised to be better. When I watched Part 1, I said a lot. So I will try to improve. The first thing that I would like to do is share with you some comp in the news. As you know, we've got a lot going on. And companies are responding, and many companies are responding favorably. So this just talks about how companies across America and the globe are ramping up efforts to give added support to their employees. So Amazon has announced that it's going to raise their overtime pay to 2 times instead of 1.5 times for the next few months or month. And then Target is spending a lot of money for bonuses and raises and paid leave. Netflix is doing the same, despite Starbucks closing a lot of their stores. They have committed to continue to pay their employees. In India, there's a company called Tata Group, make cars, and they also are saying they will pay their full wages for their workers through March and April. So again, this is a very complex problem. The federal government right now, the Senate, is working to try to ratify additional monies to help people who are out of work, as well as the employers that have employed them but can't employ them now because there's no work to do. This is primarily geared toward companies that have less than 500 employees. So I will be talking more about that as I learn more about that. SHRM has been putting out a lot of really great information. And if you have any interest at all in this, which I hope you do, that is, of course, a great resource. So, to the chapter. As you'll recall, we ended up the part 1 in talking about salary surveys and how important they are and how the federal government does a great job. And that Bureau of Labor Statistics, they gather all kinds of data on compensation. One of which, what I showed you, right, was that May 2018 was the latest data that they have. So there is huge amounts of data. But the publicly available data also is dated very quickly. So it's difficult for companies sometimes to know what to do, because if you have a lot of resources, then you're able to hire somebody. Very few companies have the skill and talent and abilities to do good salary surveys internally. So they will hire companies, but smaller companies have to be creative and find different avenues to really understand what they should be paying to be competitive in the market, but also to be consistent internally. We get to review statistics. Yay! I know so many of us love statistics, right? A lot of great things we can do with those. So the first is really basic. Central tendency. And I say see crunch the numbers practice video here, but we're just going to go ahead and do it. Central tendency is just that. Whenever you have a lot of data, they tend to cluster in the middle. And sometimes it's a really tight cluster, and sometimes it's a very wide cluster. But when I show you guys your test scores, you tend to see very few A's, very few F's, more B's and C's, and a lot more C's. So this is a normal distribution, and most data that has more than 32 data points will tend to be more normally distributed. But those things in the middle tend to, what we say, represent the data, and that's that central tendency. So that is the mean, which is the average, or the median is a separate statistic, and it just represents that number that is in the middle. So you list out all of your numbers and you look at what's the one, you count them, and what's the one in the middle. So let's do an example. I think. No. Oh, there it is. So here we have a set of 6 data points that are the annual wage for 6 different employees. So if I go here, so what you can see is this right here. Pins. This is the data that was on the slide, but it is in just a random order. So what you have to do is put them in rank order if you want to calculate the median. So the mean, all you're doing is you add all these together and you divide by the number. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this total divided by 6, and that is how you get the mean. The median, on the other hand, so now you've rank ordered from the smallest salary to the largest salary, and we have 6 data points, so there's not one in the middle. So what are you going to do? You go 1, 2, 3, and you're going to average those 2 numbers. So the average of 58,350 and 70,750 is this 64,550. All right, and all right, so let's go back and we'll start talking a little bit about variation. So on the slide here, you see I've got the mean of a normal distribution. So the average representative number here. Variation talks about how the numbers are distributed. How are the data distributed? So very common is the standard deviation. Standard deviation. So this is a small standard deviation. You have a really tightly packed data set. They're all clustering toward that center. A very large standard deviation, like when we did our job evaluation, the point method exercise was a very large standard deviation, meaning the people didn't really agree. And that basically is just saying that, you know, that central tendency has less meaning to it, because you could still have data way above, way below, and it's difficult to see if there's any kind of consistency there. Quartiles. So here, again, we count these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So the median, which is the 50th percentile, is the median here. You're going to take 80 plus 80 divided by 2 is 80. So that's going to be your median. So we have 10. We want to do 25%, which is our quartile. The lowest quartile is going to be this number, this 1, 2, 3. Now, what I want you to remember is way back in high school when you were taking those standardized tests. Did you want to be in the bottom quartile or did you want to be in the top quartile? You wanted to be at that 75th, the upper quartile, the 3rd quartile here, because that means that 75% of students' scores were below yours. In fact, you wanted to probably be up here at the 90th percentile, 99th percentile. That'll get you some good scholarships, right? So those are your quartiles. And then percentiles just are 1 to 100, and they're just a finer tune. Now I'm going to go back to this central tendency. When we're talking about compensation data, and as an organization, we're trying to figure out how much we should pay our people based on this compensation survey data, which is better, the mean or the median? So the answer is the median. Why? Because let's say it wasn't a normal distribution. Instead, let's say there's some company that's paying a whole bunch and it's out here. So now that distribution might come up and that's going to go way out here. So now the mean is over here. The median, however, is still going to be in the center because we're still going to count up the number of data points. All right, so that's really important to understand that the mean is strongly affected by outliers. The median is not, because all you're doing is counting and coming up with whatever number is in the center. All right, so we've calculated that. We've talked about how important it is for a median versus the mean. Those numbers will not be the same most of the time with real data. And which one do we prefer in compensation is the median over the mean, which is good in this case, right? We'll be paying our employees a little bit more. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thanks so much.